This is theedgeonair.com.
ICB Lombard's own underground station.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is theedgeonair.com. This is Advocates for Change. We're going to do something new today. My name is Everett O'Neill. In the studio with me, we have Tim Funches. On the boards, we have Paul Shavari, PD of theedgeonair.com. And we're going to talk about a few things for the next 2 hours. We're on from 4 to 6. Phone lines are open, 630-785-2510. Once again, the show is called Advocates for Change. It's a lot of craziness happening, and we're going to talk about it. We have a few people calling in, and we're just going to jump right to it. Tim, how's it going?
It's going real well, man. How's it going with you?
It's going great. How about yourself, Paul?
I'm doing all right today.
Good. So, as we all know, if you haven't been watching the news lately, there's been a lot of outcry over injustice going on, particularly in Ferguson, Missouri, with the death of Michael Brown, an 18-year-old who was killed by a police officer, an unarmed 18-year-old who was killed by a police officer. He was actually buried last Monday, and there's been an outcry for justice over this. And, this is one of many stories that we've heard. Michael Brown isn't the only person that's been affected by this, or his family, rather. You have Trayvon Martin, Oscar Grant. If anybody's ever seen the movie Fruitvale Station, the movie of the young man who was murdered at the Fruitvale train station while handcuffed by 2 officers. So this is just one of many stories, and we just want to not only focus on, those injustices, but, as well as what's going on back home. We are Chicago, Illinois natives, and, there's not a day that is going by this summer where, young people were, getting gunned down, not by, people in uniforms, but by our own peers. So as much as we want to fight injustices, we also have to, fight the war that's going on with ourselves. And so, Tim, if you have anything to kind of piggyback off of that.
Yeah, that's probably the saddest thing, that even though we're focusing mainly on the injustices that come from a lot of who we consider the people that should be protecting us, the bulk of the violence, the bulk of the things that are happening are coming from within the same community. So that lets us know that the war that we're fighting is a lot bigger than what we think it is. Most people think that we're fighting against police brutality. Most people think that we're fighting against the total infrastructure, but that's not it. We're fighting against ignorance here, and that just begins with ourselves. If people were to educate themselves, if people were to, kind of look deeper below the surface of each and every situation out there, take that time out to learn a new thing here or there that can further advance you, that would give you hope. That will be able to help you see that you do have a future. Because a lot of the violence that goes on is from hopeless kids, people that don't see any other way than what they're hearing on the radio or what they're seeing on TV or what their peers are telling them.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it so sad. And hopefully by us opening up this open forum today and discussing some things, it's going to, be a step in the right direction. We don't expect to change everything with just 1-2 hour conversation today. What we want to do is we want to step in the right direction. We want to get on the same page, because we have two forms. We have the optimist and the pessimist that are, kind of splitting everything in two. If we were just to join together and move in the right direction, we'll be fine.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up, what kids are hearing on the radio, because, this is why we're doing it. We have a responsibility with our platform. And a lot of people don't use their platform correctly, and they are sending out the wrong messages, but then turn around and want to say stop the violence. And so we here do not want to be hypocrites. I know Paul does a good job of, with his talents on the station to, promote as much positivity as possible. And so once again, thank you for allowing us, these 2 hours. And if you want to chime in on anything, feel free.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to open it up for discussion. There's just with all the events that have happened in the world, and especially with right here in Chicago, it seems like, we walk away from every weekend and we hear a new new shootings, new death toll every week, and you almost become desensitized to it. And instead of ignoring it, it's better to just kind of talk about it, because we're not the only people feeling this way. There's more people out there. There's people in these neighborhoods that are dealing with this on a daily basis and want it to stop. And they're not alone. And I think it's easy for people to ignore the problem, and that's not the right thing to do. It's even if it's just bringing attention to it and trying to get people that maybe didn't care about it before to start thinking about it and putting it into terms they can understand. I think that's what we're doing. This is why we're doing this. This is the opportunity that we're given here to take advantage of this moment to try and help others understand what's going on in these areas.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the main objectives. I mean, like Tim said, we know that we won't accomplish world peace in a 2-hour show today, but we want to try to work towards creating a foundation where progress can at least be made. And I mean, the first step towards trying to find a solution is identifying the problem. And the question that I will pose to you two is, what could be that problem? I mean, I know you talked about it a little earlier, but if you could just expand on it.
Well, I would say that it begins with self. Each and every individual that is out here right now needs to take a look on the inside and say, what am I bringing to the table? People don't think, they think that, I'm one person, so I don't affect change. If you're an advocate for change, if you're somebody who wants to see the world differently, if you begin by being that change that you want to see, you can affect not only yourself, but your household, your wife, your kids, mom, dad, whoever. You can affect those people that are watching you, because you really don't know it, but everyone has a group of peers. Everyone is watched. People admire you. People may look up to you. You never know who's watching you. There's always somebody doing that. And if you decide today that you're just gonna make one small step in the right direction, you can really do some damage to this garbage that's going on right now, because it's absolute garbage. Be better fathers. Yeah. Be better mothers. Because to be honest, that's where it all starts. Spend a little bit more time, doing those types of things. Those are the small things that we can actually make a couple adjustments on, and it'll give us the quickest results.
Yeah. Paul?
Well, I think there's good that comes out of some of these neighborhoods, because I'm thinking about Chicago here and how, some people just feel like, well, I'm not from that area. I never go to that area, so that's a war zone, and I'm staying out of that. But there's people in those neighborhoods that are trying to do good, and I think just focusing on maybe what these people are doing and trying to reflect off of that, what are some of the community organizers doing to try and do things better in the neighborhood there. And I think starting to recognize that there is hope, no matter what neighborhood you come from, there is hope for change, and just kind of recognizing what some of the positives are already in that region. You think about just recently with the Little League baseball team, Jackie Robinson West, coming out of Chicago. Yeah. A lot of people stopped what they were doing to kind of pay attention to that. It was a feel-good story. Absolutely. For a lot of people, and it's like, they're the underdog that everyone wanted to root for. And I think that was even just outside of Chicagoland and Illinois. I think around the United States, I think people were thinking, this is a team from the inner city, a place that we hear about every week having, gang violence, and here these kids that are really inspiring their community to kind of stop what they're doing and pay attention and realize that, it's not just bad things that are happening here. There are good things that are still happening here.
Absolutely. And I've been to a few of these neighborhoods, and I mean, Tim, you probably have too. Mm-hmm. I mean, at one point or another, when I was younger, I did live there. And I mean, I can speak for myself because I knew I've always known I was different, and a lot of my peers were, what's the word? For lack of a better word, I'll say they're sheep. Mm-hmm. They all come from the same environment where, it's the crab in the barrel mentality.
Right.
Where, one person doesn't want to see the other person shine, and if one person does stick out, they'll try to tear you down to keep you at their level. And I knew I never wanted that, and I knew I didn't have to be that way. But I know I can't speak for myself, and I always wondered, how come other people can think the same way that I was thinking? Why is it that we all just have to function this one way?
Right.
You know, like how is it that I was so lucky to see that there's more to life than just what we've seen? You know?
And I think that just to build on that a little bit, I think that it came from, and what you probably experienced was you were able to see that there was hope from some way, shape, or form. Like I said before, you never know who's watching you. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is that if, like myself, I grew up I was born and raised the first part of my life in Robbins, Illinois. That is probably one of the more low-income parts of the Chicago suburbs, right there.
Yeah.
My family was born and raised there. My mom, dad, uncles, aunts, everyone came from there, but everyone made it.
Yeah.
You know, they were in one of those types of areas, but they made it because they had sound leadership. They had people around them that told them that there's something bigger than the stuff that's going on down the street. There's something bigger than the stuff that's going on in that alley. Unfortunately, with a lot of the youth and individuals in these dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago, they get their direction and they're watching what's going on television in these videos.
Yeah.
They're hearing a lot of what's on the radio. They're hearing a lot of seeing YouTube videos of people fighting. They're glorifying just acting like idiots, for lack of a better term. You know, that stuff is glorified. If you watch World Star Hip Hop or different things like that, even though these things have some good things to them, they glorify ignorance. Yeah. And people think it's cool to be ignorant and ultimately ruin your future. So if you figure that I have to, you know, sacrifice the fun aspect of my life in order to succeed, they consider that hopelessness.
Yeah.
Because nobody taught them to be mentally tough. Nobody taught them to fight through strife and still succeed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about, you know, the low-income neighborhoods, you know, a lot of, you know, the younger people who are, you know, being raised by the streets don't have the mother or father figure. So in a situation like that, you know, can you really fault these, you know, young kids for, you know, essentially having to raise themselves and not having that guidance? Or, like, you know, where does the guidance come from in that matter?
Well, honestly, you can't fault them, because if you don't know any better, there's really no way that you can do any better.
Absolutely.
But each and every one of us has the opportunity at some point to sit down and listen to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't, although you can't fault the children, you definitely have to hold the people that are responsible for those children's lives accountable. Right down to from the mother to the individuals on the same block, to the teachers at the school, to, you know, to their aunts, to their uncles, to anybody who has contact with that one child. Somebody has to care enough to do something for them or make them feel somewhat different.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to take a short time out, and afterwards, after the break, we're going to get a few guests in. And once again, this is Advocate for Change on theedgeonair.com.